One goal of this channel is to teach people that much of what they learned in school and from news media is false. A good example is propaganda that Italian leader Benito Mussolini was a dictator. This is false. Italy's dictator during World War II was Victor Emmanuel III, pictured here in 1936. He was king of Italy and part of European royalty, so was excused from blame for bloody events. His commoner henchman, Benito Mussolini, was deemed responsible and characterized as an evil dictator. Italy was unified into a powerful nation much later than France and Britain. Its monarchs wanted overseas colonies, but most were already taken. Their desire to recreate the Roman Empire was attractive and supported by most Italians. During World War I, Italian King Victor Emmanuel III decided to join France and Britain after they promised him new territory in the Balkans and Africa. Thousands of Italians were killed fighting in the war. Italy was granted some land in post-war treaties, but not most promised by Britain and France. This caused tensions because these were already inhabited by large numbers of Italians. Benito Mussolini and his political party supported King Emmanuel's idea that Italy should become a great empire and once again rule the Mediterranean. As a young man, Mussolini promoted socialism and moved to Switzerland to evade military service. He got into trouble, so was deported and forced to serve in the Italian army. He taught school for a few years and was called up to serve in World War I, where he was wounded. After the war, Mussolini started a political movement based on nationalism that contained socialist idealism that a strong state can improve the lives of all citizens. This movement wanted to expand Italy to provide more land for Italians and access to resources. They were supported by most Italians and its monarchs, as it provided opportunities for more wealth and a counterforce to socialist and communist movements who wanted a revolution and redistribution of wealth. Mussolini's movement was praised by Western leaders and became known as Fascism, a hybrid system that combined elements of militarism, socialism, and capitalism. Fascism is not inherently evil and was popular in the United States before the war, as explained in the articles linked in the description. King Emmanuel appointed Mussolini as prime minister in 1922 to crush political opponents, often with violence. He was a powerful force in Italy, but served the king, who backed his brutal repression of dissent. Mussolini was a highly esteemed figure around the world, especially in the United States, among its millions of Italian immigrants. Italy sought to create a huge colony in East Africa by invading Ethiopia in 1935 from its two smaller possessions. This was one of the last two independent nations on that continent. Britain and France disliked Italy's growing empire and used the League of Nations to impose sanctions. This irritated Italians, who welcomed the support of Germany. Italy saw an opportunity to expand its empire after the German army quickly destroyed the French in 1940. It allied with Germany and was granted some French territory and some in the Balkans. King Emmanuel was elated with his growing empire, proclaiming himself the Emperor of Ethiopia in 1936 and King of Albania in 1939, while anointing his royal cousin as King of Croatia. Winston Churchill's goal during World War II was the expansion of the British Empire by destroying the French and Italian empires. See the tale linked in the description, The Anglo-American War on France. After the Americans entered the war and invaded French North Africa in late 1942, Italy began to lose ground. After the Americans invaded Sicily in 1943, Italian ministers blamed Mussolini for losing the war, and King Emmanuel agreed that a scapegoat was needed. On July 24, 1943, Rome's Grand Council of Fascism voted to oust Mussolini, who was arrested by the king that afternoon. The Allies knew that Italy might drop out of the war, but generals had no plan to exploit this when King Emmanuel's agents contacted them to surrender. A secret agreement was made, and Italian military units began to surrender. Unfortunately, the Allies were led by incompetent generals like Mark Clark, who failed to order bold actions to secure unguarded regions of Italy. The Germans quickly sent more units to Italy, who established strong defensive belts south of Rome that stalled the Allied advance for a year. King Emmanuel is shown here chatting with U.S. Army officers after Italy surrendered, as though he just conceded a sporting match. This Axis dictator was allowed to remain head of the Italian government. He remained arrogant and berated Allied generals for their lack of progress. Most Italians blamed him for losing the war, so the elderly king abdicated in favor of his son, who ascended to the throne as Umberto II on May 9, 1946. Italian public opinion forced the Americans to allow a referendum on whether to retain the monarchy or become a republic. 54% voted for a republic, and the monarchy dissolved. Victor Emmanuel was never charged with war crimes, and official historians pretend this brutal dictator was an innocent observer during World War II. But he had endorsed joining the war on the Axis side, and was even upset that Germany refused to give him French Nice, Corsica, and Tunisia in 1940. This royal dictator retired to live in luxury in British-held Alexandria, where he died in 1947. This deference to royal deities also happened in post-war Japan, where its dictator, known as Emperor Hirohito, and his extended family were unofficially pardoned for war crimes. His commoner henchman, Hideki Tojo, was hanged, while Hirohito continued to live in luxury and was treated as a respected figure until his death in 1989.